If you ever find yourself out of breath when you're being intimate with your missus, this is for you. My goal, honestly, is to scare you a little bit. Just a little bit. Because that's what really gets our ass in gear. If I just tell you the reason to do cardio, it's not enough. Because we're not trying to be athletes when we're dads. We're not trying to get personal best world records. We're just trying to keep up with the kids, with the wife, and with our life, and feel good. So you might feel a little bit of shame in some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. And that's okay. It's what you do with that shame. Because if that shame turns into guilt, it's destructive. But if that shame turns into action, it's constructive. So think of these scenarios. In bed with the missus. Out of breath. It's embarrassing, right? Trying to go up the stairs. Feeling out of breath when you're at work just after one flight. Or you're out on the pitch with the kids. Like we just had a community sports day in our local park. And one of the events was the dads race and the mums race each other. Now, I'm sure you're the same as me. We don't want to live our life on the sidelines. We don't want to be a spectator to our kids growing up. We want to be involved. Because we know, and you know yourself, we buy loads of crap. We're given loads of toys. And we get them, as cheap as we can because we don't believe in that type of stuff. But the kids don't care about the toy itself. They care about the interaction with you. Right? And that requires energy. So if you want energy, you have to use energy. If you want strength, you have to use strength. That's how we gain it. This is not cardio for fat loss. It's actually the other way around, but we'll get to that in a second. And speaking of fat loss, I'm going to say this again at the end, but if you haven't done so already, take the scorecard in the description. It only takes a couple of minutes. It's going to tell you exactly where you are when it comes to losing fat. Not losing weight, losing fat. That's what we're trying to do as fellas with kids and a missus, especially if we're in the middle part of our life. So this is not about punishing yourself either, because sometimes we think about David Goggins and these Marines over in America. It's almost like they're doing these workouts because they're trying to balance their life because they don't want too much happiness, but cardio should make us happy. It shouldn't be making us miserable. Right? And this is really the cardio that it's going to surprise you, I think. And the good news is it's not as hard as you think, and you can do it anywhere. But first, there's one thing we need to address because it's very, very relevant. And if you skip this, everything else is going to be harder than it needs to be. Fat loss first. We conflate weight loss and fat loss all the time. People say, I want to lose weight. What they really mean is, I want to feel good, look good naked, and have a good mood. Because a lot of these situations we find ourselves in as dads, when we're low on patience, we feel anxious, it's controlled by our hormones. And when we have too much fat in our body as men, because men generally have a lower body fat percentage than women, it really messes with our hormones. And we're going to dig into that now. So cardio and fat loss are not the same thing. Fat loss needs to come before cardio, not the other way around. Right? And we're specifically talking here about visceral fat. Now, visceral fat is the stuff that sits around the organs. And you may have seen these lads. I've got a couple of uncles in the countryside who have this. They look like they're pregnant. They've got skinny arms, skinny legs, and then they've got this big belly that's sometimes it feels hard to touch. Not that you're touching your uncle's belly, but when you're younger, maybe. That sounds weird. But what this does is it causes inflammation in the body. And the fat itself hardens and creates and forms blood vessels. So it actually becomes an organ in itself, visceral fat. And this suppresses testosterone production. It also reduces insulin sensitivity. In other words, it makes every unit of physical effort more costly. So research has shown that visceral fat alone is the number one thing that determines health of a man in terms of diabetes, heart disease, blood pressure, erectile dysfunction. It's all about the middle, our waistline essentially. So if you haven't done so, do that scorecard now. Right, let's move on. Testosterone. We often just think to ourselves, right, I'm going to decline. I'm getting old and testosterone is going to go down. Now, it is true that there is a slight decline year on year as we age. But this is not because we age, this is because of lifestyle factors. Now, we can't live the life we did when we were single, when we had no kids, but we can incorporate strategies, which I'll go through with you towards the end of this, that stimulate that testosterone. So let me talk about the three biggest suppressors of testosterone. Number one is the visceral fat. This converts testosterone into estrogen through a process called aromatization. Now, estrogen is the predominant female hormone. In other words, the more fat you have on you, the more female hormones you're producing. The second biggest suppressor of testosterone is chronic stress, because this raises your cortisol. Now, your body doesn't know if a tiger is chasing you or you get an email from a client telling they want to cancel their contract, or an email from a boss telling you he wants to see you in his office. This repeated cortisol spike suppresses your testosterone. And even the act of thinking about the event does that too. And the third and final thing is poor sleep. Can be unavoidable as a dad, as you know, but there are ways that we can optimize our sleep even as dads. Again, I'll go through that with you shortly. What low testosterone feels like, because you don't need a blood test. It's a nice to have. You got a bit of extra dosh and you're curious, but sometimes it can be a bit misleading because you have testosterone and free testosterone. And also there are many factors that come into play on the day you get testosterone measured. So it's very hard to judge your true testosterone by one blood test. But this is what it feels like. It's the gap between intending to do something and actually doing it. That widens. Motivation feels like effort rather than something natural. Patience is shorter than it used to be. Your drive in every sense, referring to the start of this conversation, is a lot lower than it was when you're a younger man. And this is pure biology, but it's all addressable, if that's a word. Another thing I heard said that makes a lot of sense is testosterone makes physical effort feel good. So when you've got good testosterone levels, a hard workout or a challenging workout feels good as opposed to draining to your nervous system. Cortisol is our primary stress hormone. And in short bursts, it's really useful because it sharpens our focus, it mobilizes energy, and it prepares us for effort. So this is the fight or flight response. Think of it this way, like Cus D'Amato, who's Mike Tyson's trainer, who passed away now, he used to say, if you're scared to fight, this is a good thing because it's a natural reaction. You know, Mike Tyson used to say, a fire can be a good or bad thing. It can cook your dinner or burn your house down, but it depends how you use it. So this is cortisol. And if we feel scared to do something, which can happen when we even working out on our own, because we're putting our body in the fight or flight response, think of it as giving our body the energy it needs. Like when a lion is chasing after an antelope. I don't know if they would be the correct prey and predator there. But that antelope needs that spike of cortisol so it can jump out of the way. It can perform superhuman feats. or it's not human, is it? So super animal feats. And that's what we want when we work out. We want to feel that spike of cortisol acutely, which is going to push us into a hard workout. So don't fear cortisol. When people say, oh, coffee raises your cortisol, or caffeine does. Yes, it does momentarily. But in short bursts, it's good for us. The problem is when you're over 40, especially, and you got the wife, the kids, the stress of paying bills and the mortgage, you're in a chronic state of low grade stress. Your elevation of cortisol is constantly high. And this is going to suppress your testosterone. It's going to promote visceral fat storage, specifically around your abdomen. And it impairs your sleep quality, reduces immune function, and it accelerates brain aging. The symptoms for most fellas are going to look like fatigue, irritability, difficulty concentrating, low motivation, and reduced libido. But the good news is zone 2 cardio, which we'll get to, is one of the most well-documented interventions for reducing chronic cortisol levels. So this is not a vague wellness claim either. This is measurable. And it's backed by many multiple peer-reviewed studies. A man who trains aerobically, as in with air as opposed to anaerobically, has a meaningful different cortisol profile than a man who doesn't. So his ability to withstand stress is far higher. It's a better threshold. And the difference shows up in his testosterone and his sleep, is in emotional regulation, his energy and his presence. And if you find yourself snapping and you're short with people, especially people closest to you, it may be that you're in a chronic state of stress with elevated cortisol. I'm going to pause there for a second. This is to say that we sometimes think like, I am wrong, I'm bad, but it's not that you're bad, it's that you're governed by your hormones, which can be controlled through certain lifestyle activities. And let's look at the neurology. In other words, what happens in the brain. So the brain runs on neurochemicals that control our mood, our motivation, our focus, and our ability to be present. And the key ones are dopamine, which is our reward and motivation, serotonin, which is your mood stability, and BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is sometimes called, in America, the miracle growth of the brain. And what sustained training does at zone 2, conversational rate, it produces structural changes in your brain. Specifically, it grows the hippocampus, the region most responsible for memory and learning. Regular cardio literally increases the physical size of your brain structures that help you think clearly. So not only is it going to make you better regulating your emotions, making you feel good, but you're able to think more clearly with your work. And as maybe you're similar to myself, I value myself and how productive I can be. Some people might call that toxic, but I want to be able to, when I sit at my desk, get as much out of it as I can, because the more time I have at my desk, the less time I got with the kids and with the wife, you know. So we've got to make it count when we're working. And zone 2 cardio is going to make us so much clearer in our work. And why this matters for men, especially as they get older, is it's going to, if you're experiencing brain fog, if you're experiencing reduced decision-making quality, emotional reactivity, difficulty being mentally present with when your family needs you, then cardio session on a Tuesday morning is going to change your brain Tuesday evening. So it's not just momentary, it lasts throughout the whole day. And speaking of which, cardio is better than no cardio, but if you're going to do it, morning is ideal as opposed to evening. Because if your heart rate is too high going to bed, it's going to affect your sleep. So here's a scenario that you'll probably recognize. It's Saturday morning and your son or daughter has a football match and you've promised them a little kickabout before the game starts. So he's out there, she's out there, and the ball comes out, you jog 20 yards and all of a sudden you're out of breath. And I remember very clearly being invited to a game of five-a-side, and I almost shit my pants because I was so unfit. I couldn't remember the last time I had actually ran. And that's a horrible feeling to have because my body went into shock having to actually run in short bursts. So that feeling of the tightening of the chest, the breathing that comes on too quickly, the legs that feel heavier than they should be after just 20 yards, or the potential shitting of the pants, this should be a warning sign that something needs to be addressed, because it's not going to get better. And it's often stuff we don't address, or we just say, I'm getting old. Like today at jiu-jitsu, wrestling with a guy, American fella, and he goes, I'm getting old. I said, how old are you? I'm 35. I thought, I'm 10 years older than you. Like, what? Stop saying I'm getting old. I mean, we're getting old, but it's not. Getting old is inevitable. Getting weak, slow, tired is a choice. So it's not a fitness problem, okay? It's a neglect problem. And it's an undertrained cardiovascular system. That's your engine. And you can have the nicest looking car going, big biceps, lovely set of calves, whatever. But if your engine's no good, that's your limiting factor. So you got the football pitch, being the knackered dad. You got the holiday scenario. When it's coming up, it's like, right, pool time's coming up or beach time's coming up, and I'm going to have to take my shirt off. And I'm going to be out in the sea, and I'm going to be swimming a little bit. Maybe, I'm out with the kids, and I can't actually I can swim, but I can't keep up because my heart and lungs don't have the horsepower. So this is going to come back to you in years to come, where you'll think, I actually couldn't keep up with my kids. They're like, Daddy, come on, swim out a bit further. Play a little bit more football with us. Can't do it. I'm just going to sit here and maybe get on the phone. Because we think to ourselves, this is just what a dad does. And it's normalised through things like the dad bod. Oh yeah, this is just the way it is. It's not the way it has to be. And then finally, we've got the football scenario. We've got the beach scenario, the bedroom scenario. Awkward. I'm an Englishman, got Irish parents. Most of the fellas that listen to this are English-Irish. And culturally, we don't like to talk about this type of stuff. The Catholic Church suppressed us, kept us down, made us feel shame, anything sexual. But once you have kids, as you know, it's not the same as it was before, in different ways. Obviously, fair enough. Now, your missus is in control of her body and how she recovers, looks after herself. And there is an element of luck there as well. So what are you doing for your body? I don't mean trying to get a six-pack, trying to get big muscles, so I look like Thor. I mean having the energy, the vitality, the libido to want to have that drive, to desire your missus. Because the biggest thing in my experience that women suffer from is the lack of desire from their partner. And approximately 40% of men over the age of 40 experience ED, erectile dysfunction. And it's not that you're less of a man. Look at, who's the ambassador for ED? Pele, the legend, one of the greatest of all time. He's a man. What a man. But it can happen to anyone. And we talk about, the psychological effect, as in like depression, anxiety causing erectile dysfunction. But the primary drivers are cardiovascular unfitness, sedentary behavior, excessive visceral fat, and hormonal disruption. Because what is an erection? It's a rush of blood to the middle of our body. That's what it is, as you probably know that. So the more efficient our body is at pumping blood around, the easier that's going to be. And this all starts with cardiovascular fitness. You've probably heard the term VO2 max, and it may cause your eyes to glaze over, but the heart is a muscle, and it's the most important muscle we got, because the more you train it, the larger it gets, the more powerful it gets. And VO2 max is a key metric for longevity. I don't know about you, but I see my kids now, and I see my parents with my kids, and it's such a beautiful thing to see your parents with your kids, and how your dad interacts with your kids, your mum interacts, and to have that 3 generations together. When my kids have kids, and I'm 70 odd, I want to be able to go on the trampoline with them. I want to be able to play football with them, go hiking with them. I don't want to be on the sidelines of their life. I want to be as involved as possible. So VO2 max is your maximum oxygen intake, the measure of how efficiently your body uses oxygen during effort. So the higher it is, the more work your cardiovascular system can sustain before it starts to struggle. We have a little sip of coffee. Not coffee, tea. I don't need any more cortisol today. So cardiorespiratory fitness was the strongest predictor of all-cause mortality in a study done by the JAMA Network Open. Stronger than smoking, stronger than hypertension, stronger than diabetes, the fittest group had a mortality risk reduction of over 80% compared to the least fit group. And what VO2 max determines in your life is your threshold of everyday activities like going upstairs, playing with your children, having a bit of slap and tickle. That's intercourse. A man with high VO2 max sustains moderate effort without breathlessness. A man with low VO2 max hits the threshold much sooner. So the out of breath on the stairs experience, the having to pause during the leg over experience, and the 7 p.m. energy cliff that you fall off, all of these is low VO2 max. So VO2 max is entirely trainable at any age, and it's a current measurement. It's not a verdict. A little sip of tea. Cardio and hormones. Here's how consistent aerobic training directly addresses your hormonal picture. We've got testosterone and insulin sensitivity. Simply put, zone 2 cardio reduces chronic stress levels. That's our cortisol. Lower cortisol allows testosterone to operate at a high level. Needless to say, active men have a higher testosterone profile than sedentary men at the same age. Then we have insulin sensitivity. All you need to know is that poor insulin is linked to elevated visceral fat, impaired testosterone, increased cardiovascular disease risk, and regular cardio addresses all of this. The compounding effect is that fix the fat, you fix the hormones, and then you can train the cardiovascular system. Each one accelerates the other. The man who does all 3 in the right order doesn't just get fitter. Within 90 days, he becomes fundamentally different physiologically. So he'll be leaner, sharper, more hormonally balanced, more energetic, and more present. Zone 2. What does that look like? So the default assumption is that I have to do really intense cardio, right, until I'm vomiting. I need to be gasping, I need to be suffering. But for fellas who've got business to run, misses, kids, you're doing it wrong if you try that approach, because you're living your life chronically stressed and then you work out chronically stressed. High intensity cardio done too frequently is going to elevate your cortisol even more, suppress your testosterone, and it's going to leave you feeling worse, not better. But zone 2 is a training intensity that you're working aerobically. Using oxygen, in other words, efficiently, without crossing into the threshold where the body produces fatigue faster than it clears it. So in practical terms, it's a pace where you can carry out a conversation. Your breathing is challenged, but you're not gasping for air, and you're able to talk in full sentences if someone was speaking to you. For fellas like us, it's a brisk walk on an incline, for example. It's an easy cycling session. Or it might be a very light jog. It feels embarrassingly slow. Like when I don't really run. I say to my wife, I'm going for a run now. But what I actually do is I go just faster than a walk. I'm barely running. I think long distance running is not good for you. I know, sorry if you hate that, but and instead I would jog very, very lightly. And then I might do a little sprint session. 6, 7, 8 sprints, that's it. Then I light jog back home again. But I don't run. Occasionally I'll do a 5K in the park if I'm able to, but that's just for the fun. So what zone 2 does at a cellular level is it builds mitochondrial density, more energy producing structures in the muscle cells. More energy, more sustained energy available all day. So that means when the bedtimes come, you're not really irritable with the kids. You're like, I'll just go to bed, or I'll go read another storybook. That work you've done in the morning is going to give you energy for the rest of the day. So it builds that. It also improves fat as fuel. So the body becomes better at using fat for everyday activity. It reduces cardiovascular risk. Hurrah, because heart disease is the biggest killer for middle-aged men. It maintains and supports testosterone, lowers your chronic cortisol, and raises your VO2 max over time. The key to longevity. So here's some basics, right? If we had a plan, 2 zone 2 sessions twice a week, 45 to 60 minutes each, conversational pace. Like, for example, Saturday night I went for a few pints. Now, I could have got a taxi there. I could have asked my wife to drive me there. But instead, I cycled. It was almost an hour to get to meet my mate. And I did it at a very slow pace. Right? That's my 60 minutes there almost and 60 minutes back. I had a few pints in between. Can you get done for drunk cycling? I don't know. But that's all it is. It's a nice, gentle cycle. Twice a week. Okay. It could be a brisk walk if you don't have a bike. If you walk an incline, it's even better. It's more efficient. Or you could do stairs, you could do a hill, do a treadmill if you've got one. And that's a legitimate zone 2 session. And research validates this. Walking done consistently beats running done occasionally. If you've got a bike, ride at a steady pace, right? Sustainable pace. Outdoor bike, static bike, same thing. If you want to jog, do it really slowly. So you're just about going faster than a walk. But make sure if you are going to jog with someone, you're able to have a conversation. It doesn't need to be more intense than that. And lock it in with implementation intentions. So when I finish work on a Tuesday, I will change my shoes and walk for 45 minutes before I come inside the house. When Saturday arrives, I will be on my bike for 45 minutes before breakfast. Specificity is what makes intention stick rather than evaporate. So just track one metric at a time. For example, resting heart rate. Okay, check it every morning before you get out of bed. And as fitness improves, resting heart rate is going to decrease. And within 90 days, most men will see a noticeable reduction. And that single number is the feedback loop telling you the system is working. And you can also look at what your resting heart rate should be based on your age. So, if you're down in the 40s, that's like athlete level. The starting point, if fitness is generally poor, would be to begin with just 20 minutes. Right? Twice a week is good at a pace that feels almost like it's too easy. And that is still infinitely better than 0. Everything compounds over time. why the gym is better. So, working out at home is better than not working out. Working out at the gym is better than working out at home. But if it means joining a gym means that you never go, work out at home. You're going to do what's most convenient for you. That may be creating a little gym in your house somewhere or paying a membership. The thing is, if you pay a membership, you might actually use it then. Depends. But let's break this down. This is optimal now. I feel strongly about this. You got one body. I'm going off on a slight tangent here, but this is to the point. People say, I'm active. I go for walks. Or I might play five-a-side once a week. That's not enough. I'm sorry. As time goes by, you're getting weaker and weaker, less mobile, more fragile. You need to be strength training. You need to be doing your zone 2 cardio. Strengthen your heart. Because if you don't, if you're just generally active, like walking here and there, and there's no structure, you're not going to get fitter. Because so when people say like, oh, I did my steps, that's great, but how's your heart rate? Or how are you measuring this apart from just the steps? Because let's say you do 10,000 steps a day, right? You don't know if you're getting fitter unless you measure another variable, like is my heart rate, resting heart rate coming down? Right, so equipment. Obviously you can walk fast up an incline, you can cycle, but one of the best things you can own is an assault bike. The fittest I've ever been is when I really damaged my neck in jiu-jitsu. So I couldn't do many movements. And instead, I spent about 8 weeks doing the assault bike 3 times a week. And that's the fittest I've ever been when I came back from that injury. So assault bike could be rowing machine as well. It's zone 2 training. It's full body. And you don't have to worry about being knocked over by a car. Because you're on a stationary bike. The assault bike in particular is great because it's upper body and lower body. And it produces that adaptation, that response that we've talked about before. The environment. A gym removes a lot of distractions. At home, there can be always something else like, oh, I should be doing a bit of housework, or I should be responding to that email if you work from home, or the kids want to talk to me or play with me. You need time to yourself as well. You got to look after yourself before you can look after them. So if you find you can't look after the kids and work out at the same time, you need a dedicated space. I mean, you don't sleep in the kitchen and make food in the bedroom. So because the kitchen is for cooking, the bedroom is for sleeping and whatever else. So, and the gym is for working out. Environmental design is critical. And the last thing is consistency. When you got a gym membership, you pay for something. People who pay money pay attention. You book the class, you've got a training partner, you've got a personal trainer. And these are commitments that you've made. You don't want to say to your wife, I'm paying for a gym membership, I don't use it. She's going to be pissed off, rightly so. So for men who are trying to build a habit, make a commitment. Social one, financial one. And that's going to hopefully get you to do the work. So let's just recap. The problem, breathlessness. In the bed, on the stairs, on the pitch, all day, every day. And these are not isolated symptoms. There's the same problem exposed in different environments. An undertrained cardiovascular system operating inside a hormonally and metabolically compromised body. Not a great way to exist. Fat loss is the foundation. Visceral fat suppresses testosterone. That spare tire around the middle. Elevates your cortisol, impairs your cardiovascular function. Get leaner first. So the fat loss scorecard in the description will tell you where you stand in just a couple of minutes. Testosterone and cortisol, opposing hormones. Testosterone declines 1-2% after 35. Fair enough. Cortisol is elevated by chronic stress of the modern life, but both are directly addressable through consistent zone 2 training. The neurology: dopamine, serotonin, BDNF. A single aerobic session changes brain chemistry for hours. Sustained training grows the hippocampus. So that Tuesday morning session is going to carry all the way to Tuesday evening. And the real scenarios that you'll find yourself in: the Saturday morning kickabout, the swim in the sea, the bedroom, the 6 p.m. energy cliff, and the cardiovascular failures. These are all fixable. VO2 max, the single number that determines the threshold at which everyday life feels like an effort. Trainable at any age, measurably improvable within 90 days. Zone 2, conversational pace. Twice a week, 45 to 60 minutes. Works with hormonal environment rather than against it, so it's not going to stress you out more. The gym advantage: better equipment, dedicated environment. It's a commitment device. Where to start? Well, if you haven't done so already, click that link below. It's going to take you less than 5 minutes. And we always start with, let's get lean first. All right, let's build the cardiovascular engine on top of that, and the results will then compound over time. But metabolically, you have to be healthy first before you stress your system. 90 days, give yourself 2 sessions a week at conversational pace. You're able to kick a ball around without stopping, swim to that pontoon in the sea with the kids, be present at 6:30 p.m. and be physically present when you're needed. Everywhere around the house, even the bedroom. Listen, I hope that was insightful and helpful. I know it's awkward conversations to have, but sometimes they're needed. And it's all out of love. Because we've all been there. We've all seen pictures of ourselves and winced. We've all found ourselves breathless at the wrong time. But you can do it. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll catch up with you next week.